Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to this UCL Connect event, Nutrition, How to Enhance Your Productivity at Work. My name is Lisa Yassamides, and I work in the Alumni Relations team at UCL. I'm very excited to be a part of this event today, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from our guest speakers. For those of you who don't know about the UCL Connect series, this event is part of the series which looks at improving the professional development skills and expertise of alumni and students across the global UCL community. So whether you're established in your career, moving into a new industry, or considering your options post-graduation, the UCL Connect series has something for everyone. The programme is a mix of virtual and in-person events, which run around once a month during term time. On the screen, you'll see a few examples of previous sessions we have run, and if you would like to rewatch any of these sessions, please do follow the URL at the bottom of this slide. Before we begin with the event, I just want to let everyone know that the event is being recorded. There will be an opportunity to ask some questions to the panel, and you can do this by writing your questions in the Q&A section, which you should see at the bottom of your screen. Please put your questions in here at any point during the session, and the questions which are the most popular will be answered first. For those of you who are not aware, there's also the option to bring up live captions on your screen. So these need to be individually turned on. If you'd like to use this feature, you will see a button that has 3 dots and the word more at the bottom of your screen. If you click that button, then click captions, followed by the option that says close show captions. This will enable that feature for you. Up on the screen is what to expect from today's session. So we'll begin with some introductions, followed by the presentation, and wrap up with the opportunity for questions from the audience. So what is today's session about? Well, if you want to know how you can improve your energy levels and productivity at work, then you have come to the right place. If you find your concentration dipping after lunch, want to know how you can improve your energy levels, nutrition plays an integral role in an employee's ability to show up at work. So today I'm really excited. We'll be joined by a panel of experts who will share their tips for enhanced productivity so you can bring your best self to work. I'm delighted to welcome our chair for today, UCL's very own Dr. Adrian Brown. Welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for that lovely introduction. And welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. It's 12:30. You might have lunch with you. You might not. But hopefully today we can give you a little bit of tips about how to help with your nutrition in order to keep that productivity all the way to the close of day. Oh, I rhyme there. Good afternoon. My name's Adrian Brown. I am an NIHR Advanced Fellow and Senior Research Fellow in Nutrition and Dietetics at University College London. By trade, I am a Senior Specialist Weight Management and Bariatric Dietitian. So I worked in the NHS for about a decade and set up a regional weight management service. I've now been working in the Centre for Obesity Research for the last 6 years and really focusing on obesity and type 2 diabetes, particularly nutrition with my dietetic background. As we've heard, nutrition is absolutely key to health, and therefore knowing how to manage this within your work environment is absolutely essential. Today, we have an amazing panel of alumni who will all share their own experiences and tips and guides to help you along this road. So without further ado and keep to time, let's get started. Regarding questions, can you please again put them into the chat, and then we can bring them to the panelists and get you going. So I'm going to get each panelist to introduce themselves to everyone. So I'm just going to name people as we've agreed. So I'm going to go with Nicholas first. If you could just come on and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hello, thank you very much, Adrian. My name is Dr. Nicholas Peat, and I am a GP with a specialism in nutrition and lifestyle medicine. And, you know, in 2008, I sustained a small bowel perforation. I was diagnosed with severe Crohn's disease, and that was shocking. I was doing A&E at the time, but through that transformation, I learned how to transform my life. I changed what I ate, changed how I moved my body and how I thought. That is what we're talking about today. How do you improve your life in terms of what we eat, how we live, and what we think even in our minds? And so with that passion, I co-founded a company called Uniquely Created You, which is all about nutrition. It's all about changing how we think and how we move our bodies and helping people conquer chronic diseases. And so that's me. Thank you very much.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, Nicholas. Georgine.
Hi everyone, my name is Georgine Lung. I'm a nutritionist with a keen passion for food education. In my experience as a nutritionist in the past 2 decades, my work has spanned sectors including the charitable, higher education and industry. But throughout my work, I realized the importance of also the social and cultural context of eating in nutrition, in promoting healthy eating messages. So I'm keen to combine different disciplines in nutrition, looking at people's lives and also social context, cultural backgrounds. And currently, I am working towards a PhD in studying the postpartum practices of women, their families, and caregivers. And look forward to talking to you more about nutrition, particularly in how to boost productivity in the workplace. But understanding our social environment and our cultural background have huge impacts on how we eat and drink. Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. And now we're going to go to Mariella.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mariela. I am from Monterrey, Mexico, and I've been living in the UK for the past 2 years. So as you saw, I did my master's at UCL in clinical and public health nutrition, and I've been working in clinical nutrition for the past 4 years. I currently work in health tech here in the UK in a startup called Surgery Hero. We work closely with the NHS to support patients in the preparation and recovery from elective surgeries. As we know, this has a huge impact in reducing the risk of complications and hospital stay. And well, besides that, I teach a module on gut microbiota and nutrition in the nutrition and dietetics program in Tec de Monterrey back in Mexico. And as you can see, I have a strong interest in nutrition and digestive health. So I'm really happy to be here. And thank you, UCL, for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Mariella. And certainly not least, Aisha. There we go.
Hello.
Aisha. Hi.
Sorry about that. I'm terribly sorry.
Right.
I'm having a bit of computer problems, but hello, I'm Aisha. I also, with Mariella, I studied in 2022 the nutrition and public health, clinical public health nutrition degree, which was very exciting because my undergraduate was in public health. And then I went on to specialize into nutrition. Very similarly, I kept on finding that there was these reoccurring themes of undernutrition and then overnutrition in so many public health scenarios. And I definitely thought that that was something that I wanted to specialize in. Since I went on to work in an NGO where we worked on international nutrition policy, which was very exciting. And since then, I've now moved on to an also health tech company called Zoe, which I'm sure many people have heard of. And it's very exciting because there's a lot of exciting research that they're leading to do with the gut microbiome, blood sugar spikes, and a lot of exciting things to do with the gut microbiome. So yeah, I'm looking forward to speaking to you all.
Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you, Aisha, for that introduction. We have an absolute expert panel here who hopefully are going to help. So I'm going to run off to the first question. We've got around half an hour for chats, and then we'll have 20 minutes for Q&A. So without further ado, first question. How does lifestyle, including health, hydration, and activity, and sleep impact on productivity? So I'm going to randomly choose someone. So Georgine, off to you for that first question.
Indeed, thank you very much. And of course, we know nutrition, how we eat, plays a very important role in our health and how we feel about ourselves and how our health outcomes are panned out. So it's very important that we think about what we eat, sleeping patterns as well, physical activity. I think generally we talk about health in different segments, including nutrition, physical activity levels, sleeping patterns, but they all have a strong connection with each other. So particularly, I think since COVID, since the pandemic, we've all had our fair share of working from home. We understand how having a healthy routine is so important, particularly with juggling with different responsibilities at work, at home, with small children, for example. So I think the bottom line with having lifestyle is really about building a routine. And if you ask me, it's really about building a routine around meals, around foods. And it's not just the 3 main meals of the day. And some people would argue we might not need to eat 3 main meals. We can just have small meals. And it's really up to the individual and personal preferences. But I think in order to design your day and make it more productive, in my opinion, meal times are a good natural way to stop the day, take a good break, and maybe make mini breaks during the day as well, to have a sip of water, have a bit of a move about, and even a quick stretch can help you a lot. And I think when it comes to meals and snacks, for example, a lot of people might have questions about snacks, and we might delve into it a bit of a deeper dive in a bit as well. But what we think about snacks could be just mini meals. And I'm sure we will open this question up to the rest of the panel in a bit too.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Georgine. I'm going to go to Nicholas now.
Thank you very much. So, life is up and down. And we can have the best plan for a routine, but sometimes you can't get to the shop, your fridge is empty, you wake up late, you have a bad night's sleep. And so you're disordered, your routine gets disrupted. So how can we think about our performance of the day when we've had a bad night, for example? Your routine's messed up, you haven't prepared your meal or what have you. Oftentimes that causes drowsiness in the afternoon, and low productivity, cognitive function. You're more likely to have an argument with the kids or with the wife, or drive in an angry way. So the point is that, one, being aware of the situation you're in. If you've slept badly, prepare for the fact that you're going to be a little bit more stressed. So take a breath, just reflect a little bit. Take a deep breath before you rush out. Think about your speed as you're going down the road. Don't get more stressed, don't get into more difficulty. When you get to work and the afternoon comes and the afternoon dip has hit you, be aware of the fact that you're more likely to want to seek out sugary foods when you're tired. When you eat those sugary foods, the sugar's released into your bloodstream more readily. So you're more in a pro-diabetic state in that phase. So trying to do your very best to avoid the donuts. That's what I had to do. I was working as a doctor. The donuts were there. If I was tired, I had to avoid those donuts. I knew I was more likely to eat them. Think about your hydration status. Oftentimes, we're very dehydrated after a meal. We need an awful lot of water to digest that food at lunchtime. And so drink in the afternoon water, and that can help stimulate and revitalize you even when you're very tired. And I'll leave it there for a moment.
Thank you very much, Nicholas, for that. Okay, Mariella.
Yeah, I think I would agree with both Nicholas and Georgine. I think it's all about finding that balance and balancing between all the factors. I'm sure we have all experienced how the impact of a bad night can certainly negatively impact our productivity, either at work or at school. And as Nicholas said, it not only impacts our cognitive function, but also the food choices and decisions the next day. So it's quite common from experience to hear people say that they have more sweet cravings after not sleeping well. And this is just a way of seeking out that missing energy. So often we just opt for foods that give us that energy quickly, like energy bars, biscuits, chocolates, or even energy drinks. And even if they do provide that energy quickly, then definitely the lack of fiber and just the amount of sugar will eventually give us that energy dip at some point, or energy crash. And in a certain way, it just promotes that vicious cycle again. Plus, I personally feel way more susceptible to stress after not sleeping well. So obviously, this is talking about short-term effects in productivity, but we know that also that chronic imbalance in between all of these factors is also associated with an increased risk of conditions like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, and then also influences our mental health with other conditions like anxiety or depression.
Thank you very much, Ariella. And finally, Aisha, anything else to add?
Yeah, I'm actually going to touch upon something that Mariella and both Nicholas said, and they were talking about those energy slumps. And I'm a firm believer in starting your day off right. If we want to harness this idea of having a very productive day, we want those high energy levels. I think a lot of people make the mistake of starting off their days with something quite sugary. You know, sometimes even they think like a bowl of oats is really good, which for the most part is. But if we've got lots of sugar in there, you're essentially going to spike your blood sugar. You're going to have an energy crash very quickly. And then the rest of the day, you're going to feel quite lethargic. So I'm a big, big believer in food combining and making sure that you've got your healthy fats, your protein, and just making sure that you've got a really good source of fiber in there to make sure you've got that sustained energy level and you're feeling satiated and happy, and you're setting yourself up for a good productive day essentially.
That's great. That's great. And there's some really great tips there as well for people to take away today and use, hopefully. So I guess you've all sort of mentioned sleep. There's some discussion around diets, etc. But let's think about activity for a moment. So what is the benefit of activity or reducing sedentary time on productivity? So I'm going to jump out with Mariella first. So how does activity help?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's important to differentiate between physical activity and exercise. Both are equally important in my opinion. But we know physical activity includes all of the things that we do that involve, movement along the day, regardless of the intensity or the purpose. So it's great to have a structured exercise routine that certainly provides lots of benefits, but it's essential to raise awareness of the importance of activity in the rest of our day. I think nowadays, with the increase in remote jobs, it's just very hard to combat this sedentary lifestyle. It's very challenging. So it's very clear with research how decreasing this sedentarism can positively impact both mental health and productivity. So focusing on the benefits, I would say we know physical activity can support stress regulation, improved concentration, and other physical benefits like we know, such as benefits for the metabolism, cardiovascular health, and then also increased muscle and bone strength. So I personally feel much better after a quick walk at lunchtime or just squeezing in a workout when working from home. And I think that can certainly reset in the middle of the day to kind of refuel mentally. So I think it's equally important to encourage people to have that as part of their routine and not only focus on the nutrition, but also complementing with physical activity.
Thank you, very much, Mariella. And Aisha, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mariella. Essentially, I totally agree with everything Mariella says. And also a lot of research also points to the fact that exercising after a carb-rich meal, so say if we've just had lunch, we've just had a sandwich, it can also help to dampen the blood sugar response for a lot of people. And that's because exercise can make our muscles up to about 50 times more efficient at absorbing glucose from the blood, because they need that glucose to be in order to be able to contract and allow you to sustain the exercise. So essentially, there's so much good that can happen from what we like to call it at the company I work for at Zoe, is after you have your lunch, we call it the postprandial walk. So make sure you go on that 20-minute walk and essentially try and level out your blood sugar.
Some really nice advice there related to a little bit of a reduction of those blood glucose. Yes, it helps with insulin independent glucose uptake. There we go. So we're now going to go to Georgine. So benefits of activity or reducing sedentary time on productivity.
Yes, for adults, so the recommendation for physical activity is at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity each day. And I think sometimes this number can be quite off-putting for people who, oh, I don't have 30 minutes to get me going. But we can break it down into, smaller chunks of the time, say 10 minutes times 3 or 15 minutes times 2. I think that is more accessible in many ways. I think we know the benefits of physical activity, and it's not rocket science, but how practically can we then embed improved physical activity levels and actually reduce sedentary activity levels in our lives? Is actually planning again these small bouts of time during the day, and easy things or more accessible ideas could be, as Mariella was saying, going for a walk after lunch to help improve your blood sugar levels, as Aisha was saying as well. And actually, sometimes I find just stopping for a little bit and do some squats or some, just physical activity which you think might be quite silly, or just dance about for a little bit too, and just to get your heartbeat going and improve your breathing a little bit as well to actually get your heart pumping a little bit stronger and to help get your whole body going, and not just helping, you know, your physical element of the body. It really helps with improving mood as well. I know it's often said, but it's very little done to think about it as well. So there's so many benefits, and sometimes we just need to follow our gut feeling to go along with it, move more, feel better.
Right. And Nicholas, thank you.
Thank you very much. Absolutely, everyone here just speaks from the same hymn sheet. I just love it. But I'll just throw in this. Look, what am I doing? What we all doing at this moment? Most of us would be sitting down. Sitting down is one of the most dangerous things for our health. When we sit down for 8 hours a day, it causes dehydration, and people get chronic back aches when they're 20. It might cause neck strain if your desk is not at the right height in your screen. People get repetitive strain injury using a mouse. I see people like that all the time. It's the third leading cause of people being off work. What's first? Anxiety and depression. What's second? Is stress. So our mind and how we move is very important. But let's stick back with that first thing I mentioned. Just by standing up, buying a standing desk, for example, is a helpful thing. Or even put some books on a stand, whatever it is. Just make it straightforward. When I was a doctor in a doctor's office, when I was a doctor, I said I'm a doctor, in a doctor's office, I started with books. And that's how I raised my screen. And then when I got some money, I got a standing desk that could go, a platform that can go on the desk. And then when I got some more money, I invested in a whole desk that goes up and down electronically. So you can start simple with a few books. And just to stand up will help your shoulders be relaxed. It will help your muscles be more efficient. It will help your insulin levels. People mentioned insulin and glucose management. Helps your pancreas be more efficient just by being slightly more active by standing up. So getting up and standing and not being so sedentary is crucial. It also helps your cognition as well. If you're sluggish sitting down, standing up helps make you a bit more alert. And the final point I'll say on that is it takes, 18 days to 254 days, I think Lally showed, to make a behavioral change, somewhere between that range, 66 days on average to make it automated. So the fact is, if you're stuck in your seat and you don't exercise, I've told so many people to exercise, they don't start exercising. And some of you will not be exercising. So do what has been said. Just start with a simple walk. A simple walk is all you need. Try and target it every single day. And then eventually your body will get used to it and you'll start challenging it a bit faster and a bit faster. Then maybe think about that desk. Just do one step at a time and be consistent with it. Consistency is what will make the change.
Thank you, Nicholas. I noticed everybody, as soon as you mentioned posture, standing slightly back up. And I thought you were going to ask us all to stand there. That's where I thought you were going with that. But if you are online and you fancy standing up and watching a little bit of this and you are able, please do. Now we're going to go on to the next question. Thank you so much for that. So we've sort of mentioned this. You mentioned it just before, Georgine, around snacking. So I'm sure we all have had an occasional snack in between our meals. But how does snacking impact on productivity? And what would a healthy option be? Now, with Georgine mentioning it first, I'm going to go with you. So your snacks, what can we do?
So the idea of snacks being high in saturated fat, sugar, and salt is itself quite a modern cultural phenomenon anyway. So I think we need to rethink what snacks are. And for me, it means small eats, just basically small eats during the day, snacking. It could be a piece of fruit, could be some veggie sticks as we like, or could be a slice of toast, small bowl of soup, even small bowl of noodles, small bowl of pasta, as you like, really. So we have to really, I think, reshift the way we think about snacks and how they can also make useful contributions to a healthy diet as well. But one important thing, as Nicholas mentioned just now, is about actually storing the right kinds of food in a cupboard. So never go food shopping when you're hungry, because that's when you tend to stock up the foods which are unhealthy. And it's okay to have some of these snacks, or snacks highly processed, ultra processed, whatever, how we like to define them. But it's important that we know that in order to sustain our sugar levels during the day, these snacks can also make useful contributions and healthy contributions to our nutritional intake as well.
Great, thank you very much for that. Aisha.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Georgine. I'd agree with everything she says. And also I would, again, going back to my point about meal combining, I'm a big fan believer on it. For example, I think growing up, we've all been told, grab a slice of fruit or a piece of fruit from the fruit bowl. And that was always something that I did a lot growing up, until I started learning about my own blood sugar levels and finding that actually, when I do have like a banana, I do get a bit of a spike. So I've just learned over the years to also combine that banana with a handful of nuts. And what happens is you've got those healthy fats, you've got fiber in those nuts, and it does help you sustain that energy for quite some time. And also, I'm a big fan of making sure vegetables are all chopped in the fridge. So I'll have like a little Tupperware, and I'll make sure that I'll have some carrot sticks, I'll have some cucumbers, and I'll also have like a good little hummus, which I'll snack on. And I think another point is also to be very mindful when you're snacking. I think a lot of us, we have very busy lives. We could be at our desks. We like to snack for, I don't know, boredom or stress, etc. So sometimes it's really good to just sit back, think about it and think, am I hungry? Am I bored? Do I want to nourish myself? And just really being in tune with your body. I think it's a very effective step that you can take. And based on that, choosing a snack, I think, is a very powerful tool.
Great, thank you so much for that. Nicholas.
Thank you. So I'm going to hammer on about how good snacks are. Yes, certainly they can make you more alert and make you more productive. Absolutely, the right type, as they've stressed. I suppose from my perspective, you know, having to go to work and do that commute and, you know, done the student thing, done everything, most things in life at my age. But, you know, I recognize the fact that planning or knowing where you might be able to get good nutrition when you're not prepared for it is very important. The first is on your day-to-day basis, it's making sure that you carry your food with you, make your food choices in the morning or the night before. So if you feel that you need to have some walnuts today because you haven't had any for a long time, or some apples or whatever it is, you can put it in your lunch bag and start carrying your lunch to work, as opposed to buying food when you're out and about. And I know that's not great for the cafes and stuff, but you have to be mindful that oftentimes the sorts of food you're buying from these fast food joints usually are not the healthiest type. Usually it's refined carbohydrates you're buying, or a sugary drink. Yes, there might be water. You might not feel like some water. Does it have the other alternative that you might want? Are there unsalted, unroasted nuts available? You know, the healthier form of nuts rather than the unhealthy. So plan and take your food with you. And if you can't take your food with you, know where you can get good food from when you're out in the day, so you can plan that in your day. And quite frankly, if you have a bad day, don't worry about it. It's what you do on the majority of the days, not what you do on the off chance. So don't punish yourself if you do it wrong.
Thank you. And thank you very much. And Mariella.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I agree with all of you. I would say the most important thing is to understand, like Aisha mentioned, where this feeling of snacking is coming from. And it might be a reflection of a lack of energy, perhaps due to an unbalanced meal. So it's good to assess and see if you're lacking or missing something in there, mainly protein, perhaps. And also dehydration. I think it's often overlooked, but it's quite common to feel tired or low in energy if you're dehydrated. And yeah, by understanding where the feeling of snacking is coming from, I think it's easier for us to opt for either food or drinks that support our energy levels, or perhaps also opt for alternative actions that will help us cope with stress in a better way. And yeah, I think snacks are a great opportunity to nourish your body if you need it, and just opt for the assertive combinations of macronutrients. I would say one of my favorite ones is definitely combining a piece of fruit with some healthy fats or protein like Greek yogurt, and that can certainly ensure a more steady glucose and energy level throughout the day.
Absolutely fantastic. And sort of thinking about that, just If you could just give me sort of one bit of advice each to sort of think about how you can sustain your energy levels through that day. So I'd like to go with Aisha first on that. Sort of, what top tip would you give about sustaining your energy levels?
I would say making sure that the meals that you have planned for the day all encompass all the key areas, all the key macronutrients, so that you're not feeling that you have to snack, and just making sure that you're making mindful food choices. Also listen to yourself. Intuitive eating is a huge thing, so making sure that you're listening to what your body's craving. Our bodies are very intelligent. So yeah, that's my top tip, I would say.
Wonderful, for sustaining that energy. Wonderful, thank you. One top tip, Georgine, for sustaining energy through the day.
I think being mindful is so important, Aisha. And I think the idea is to also make time for food and try to get away from your desk. I know El Desco is becoming more and more popular, but actually staying away from your desk, albeit for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, can really, really help to enjoy your food and try not to minimize screen time whilst you're having your food as well. I know it's a bit challenging, but focusing on the food and appreciating, where the food comes from as well, making time and the mindfulness for it.
Great, wonderful. Mariella, one top tip?
I would say choosing fiber-rich foods and ensuring that you're getting enough protein. That's a good way to kind of make sure that the release of energy is more gradual throughout your day. And also understand what works for you. I find people often fasting just because, they read it somewhere, and it's completely fine if it works for you, but also understand when it's not, and just assess, the meal patterns that work with your lifestyle and your energy levels. Yeah.
Great. And finally, Nicholas, one top tip on sustaining energy levels.
Yeah, I have to go back to, being non-sedentary. And yeah, we've spoken about it during the day. If you can take a telephone call, instead of taking it sitting down, stand up and take the call, walk around the office if you possibly can, use a standing desk, you've already mentioned as well. But oftentimes I hear about people saying to me, look, in the evening, I can't go and exercise, I'm just too tired. Do you not realize that actually exercise gives you energy? So going to exercise will rejuvenate you. So resist this temptation. If you've sustained all through the day, you've eaten all great, and then you jump in that car and you get home or on the tube, what have you, and all of a sudden you feel that, resist the temptation to just sit on the sofa and then eat a load of carbs and then have a snack at 8 o'clock and then go to bed. That's not the best way to do it. It's to think about, well, if you've got that time, rather than spend it watching a soap and then the news and then some other documentary, what have you, think about using some of that time to actually be active in the evening if you possibly can, and resist that temptation to just sit down. That's a misnomer. If you activate yourself, if you go for even a fast-paced walk, or you go for do a HIIT workout at home in front of the TV, you will be amazed at how much energy you generate. And so be careful, therefore, that you don't do it too late, because that will cause you not to be able to sleep properly. So just think about doing that earlier in the evening.
Great, wonderful, some fantastic advice there. Now, sort of linking into a couple of comments in the Q&A, what is the role of our gut microbiome in our health? And I'm going to kick off with Mariella.
Yeah, I think this topic is one of the most extensive but most interesting ones, and it's becoming increasingly clear that the gut microbiome has an impact not only in digestive health, but also in metabolic health, immunological health, and even mental health. So focusing on productivity, we know that the gut-brain axis, which is the bi-directional network between the gut and the brain, has an impact on our mood, stress responses, and cognitive function. And primarily, well, we know that's through the regulation of neurotransmitters such as serotonin. So we know that the gut microbiota is impacted not only by what we eat, but also by different lifestyle factors, such as the ones mentioned today. So to maintain a good balance, I would say some of the tips that we just mentioned can certainly promote healthy microbiome. But yeah, I think we'll probably cover a few tips on that at the end.
Absolutely fantastic. That's brilliant. Okay, Aisha.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Mariella. I totally agree with everything you said too. I think what's really fascinating to me is when I found out that 60% of our immune system lives in our gut. So the gut-brain axis is crazy. Like the connection is something that's been studied quite extensively at the moment. And I think for that reason, a lot of health, a lot of illnesses, a lot of it all comes from what we eat. Our energy levels come from what we eat, how we sustain ourselves, how we nurture our gut microbes. And I think a big question is, so how do we do it? How do we look after our gut microbiome? How do we improve the good bacteria in our gut? Because we have an intermingling of good gut microbes and we have the bad gut microbes. So how do we increase the good? How do we decrease the bad? And I think my top tips is always to everybody is increase the amount of plants you're having in a week. There's studies that show that if you're having 30 plus different types of plants a week, you're massively feeding those good microbes. And that can include spices, that can include seeds, nuts. So you don't have to be eating tons and tons of veggies too, although that's great too. If you can do that too. But just make sure you're doing a lot of plant diversity, essentially. And secondly, I always advise for people to start introducing fermented foods into their diet. Fermented foods act as probiotics, and this can include kimchi, kefir, sauerkraut, and all of these have actual live microorganisms in them, which feed your gut microbiome and feed your gut bacteria, and essentially they increase the good microbes in your gut. So it's something that I recommend. I say start off a little bit, get your gut microbes adjusted to it, but the benefits are well documented.
Right, wonderful. Nicholas, anything to add?
Well, I think it's important that people understand what it is in the first place. And so, obviously you hear about it in terms of billions of bacteria, fungi, and all sorts of other bugs. But essentially, I think it's important that we understand with everyone who gets like gut related problems and issues, we have a cell, we have a mucus layer, and we have these gut bacteria. So if you think about those gut bacteria as being good soldiers, the good ones, they're green, for example, and they are soldiers around a moat. The moat is the water, the mucosal layer, and then you have a cell, which is the castle in between. If you have unhealthy foods, then you deplete all those good soldiers, and then the red soldiers, the bad ones, come in there, various signs, and they bring toxins along with them. That dries out your moat. They sap it out, and then they start digging at the cell wall, causing inflammation, and eventually they perforate through that, and that causes a problem. If it perforates all the way through, you get bowel perforation of all these bad bugs and peritonitis. So the point is, and that's with inflammatory bowel disease like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease in particular. So if we reverse all of that, we have to try and make sure that we have a good, flourishing and diverse microbiome. And you do it by doing all those things that everyone has said before, by having good probiotics and prebiotics in your diet, making sure having good vegetables in your amounts, 4 to 5 servings of vegetables per day. How do you do that, for crying out loud? Do you have 5 meals per day? Well, no, just double the portions. And you can at least get 4. My wife gave me such a big portion of broccoli. Last night, I didn't moan about it because I understood that was 2 portions of broccoli that I was having. And therefore, I was more likely to fulfill that guideline of 4 to 5 vegetable portions or servings a day.
Wonderful. And very quick point. Georgine, anything else to add about gut microbiome?
Excellent. So really is diversity. I think portion matters. Even if we're eating too much, can be quite damaging to our gut health as well. Nourishing our gut bacteria, remembering that our gut bacteria, gut microbiota is our first line of defense to our health, to our body.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And okay, lots of questions. I want to get to them soon. So this is the final question from me. If you could recommend to people in the audience one singular thing, this is one thing, not added on 3 or 4 different things, this is one thing to help them as of tomorrow, what would that be? Nicholas.
Stand up and take a walk. Thank you.
Wonderful. Aisha, one thing.
Increase your fiber, make sure you're getting 30 grams of fiber a day.
Wonderful. Georgine?
Drink up, make sure you're drinking plenty, especially in the summer weather. Limit your caffeine and alcohol, and be mindful in your eating habits.
Oh, you've added 2 in there. Oh, gone against the grain. And Mariella.
I would say prioritize your sleep. That has an impact on everything. So yeah.
Couldn't agree more. And for me, if you get an opportunity, of not tried it, meditation. It's changed my life. So I cannot believe it. We are 1 minute ahead of time. Thank you so much to the panelists for such a wonderful discussion around those questions. But now what we're going to do is we're going to pop over to the Q&A on the questions that we have there. So I think some of the questions have actually been answered. We've had questions around gut microbiome, a couple about activity. There is a question sort of around this idea of fertility, and to try and keep to time, what we're going to do is I'm just going to pick someone through the panel. I hope you don't mind, unless you have something urgent to say to answer the question. And so what I like to do is I like to sort of talk about a little bit about fertility, and Georgine, you sort of mentioned your PhD is around that topic of postpartum, that sort of idea. So the question really was around sort of fertility and helping people, and any sort of dietary advice related to that.
I think when it comes to a healthy diet, generally it applies to all stages of life. Very important that we make sure we eat 5 a day, have a lot of fruit and vegetables because they contain a lot of phytochemicals, great for gut health, sources of dietary fiber as well, healthy fats, and generally lots of hydration, plenty of healthy hydration, so water particularly. But I think when it comes to fertility, there seems to be quite a lot to do with stress as well. So I think stress is a big topic that we probably need another UCL Connect panel to talk about. And of course, nutrition can play a role, but importantly, healthy diet is the key pillars is to try to eat a diversity, thinking about base your meals on high fiber, starchy foods, healthy fats, plenty of fruit and vegetables. And that should help starting to build your healthy lifestyle as well, including lots of physical activity. And that should help moderate your stress levels, which should contribute to improving fertility levels as well.
Wonderful. That's great. Does anyone else have anything else to add there? Yes, Nicholas?
Yes, 95%, or some data shows that 95% of the population are deficient in omega-3 oils. That means they have an imbalance. You have too much omega-6 and too little omega-3. And these are our essential fatty acid, they're fish oils essentially, right? And there's lots of omega-6 out there floating around in our diets, and there's not enough fish in the sea to feed everyone, and people don't have a lot of fish. So how is this important for IVF? Well, low or high or optimal omega-3 levels in the blood help optimize your sperm and ovum. They improve fertility. So, and it doesn't just do that, it helps your neurons as well in your brain. It helps your gut and inflammation. It helps with wound healing. So omega-3 oils are very, very important, which is why the government recommend that you have at least 1 oily fish per week and 1 non-oily fish per week, if not even 2. Because we have done tests in persons who even have 1 oily fish per week, salmon, for example, and they're still out of balance. So you really have to focus on this. Most people are out of balance. So omega-3 supplement is very, very important. You can get it with cod liver oil. You can also get vegan options for omega-3 as well. But that's just one thing for IVF. There are many other factors, and some have been alluded to. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Wonderful. That's great. Okay, so very quickly, someone said, I've heard after eating standing for 30 minutes. Is it true? Nicholas, you're the standing king. What do we say?
So should we stand after 15 minutes?
Yeah, for 30 minutes. Is there benefit?
Of course, there's a benefit. You know,
Yeah.
One of the other panelists said go for a walk after. It's the same. It's less than doing a walk, but at least it's some activity. If you can't go for that walk because you've got so much work to do, then by all means stand up. I do. So yes, stand up.
Yeah, wonderful. We've got a question here. How do people process the same calories in different ways, and what does it mean for individual health? I'm going to go with Aisha there. Do we process the same calories in different ways?
So that's a really great question, actually. I work for a personalized nutrition company, so we'd like to say, no, you absolutely do not. We are all very unique. We all have very unique gut microbiota, which means that the way we process foods and what foods are good for us are completely different from one another. It's a very good question. What this means for individual health, it means that what will work for me might not work for you. But with a lot of trial and error, you do have to, in Zoe, that's what we essentially do. We test and we give you personalized scores. So yeah, that would be my answer.
Wonderful. Anybody else? We good to, Nick, go?
Yeah, personalization. It's all about testing. So it's about analyzing your body. It's about understanding your mindset, what we do, what our habits are, what are our hindrances that stop us from making those changes. So behavioral change is unique. The nutrition plan is unique. Our conditions are unique. So it just needs a unique approach to it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. We're going to move on. Good sharing here. I'm going to try my best. Okay, so considering foods are basically carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins, fibers, and minerals, what's the best mix in a diet? Mariella.
The best mix in a diet would be one that feels sustainable over the long run, which usually involves including a bit of everything. So having all of the macronutrients in your meals. It's not sustainable to restrict a particular food group, apart from also depriving yourself from getting the benefits of each of the food groups. So yeah, by ensuring you get enough carbohydrates in your diet, vegetables, fruits, protein, and then healthy fats, you're gonna have a very strong immune system as well, and then a healthy gut microbiome.
Fantastic. All the ticks. Anyone else want to add anything there? We're going to move on. Wonderful. Great. Okay. So what food would you recommend for breakfast to start your day well? Georgine?
Well, my personal favorite is oatmeal, porridge oats, and I've always found it, sometimes I forget about it because it can sometimes come across too bland and boring, but then whenever I have it, I'm always pleasantly surprised. Every time I can put different toppings on, but make sure that they include some nuts and seeds and fruit, for example. But I think when it comes to breakfast as well, it's also important to make quite interesting to kickstart your day, because breakfast really makes a huge difference. If you have a good breakfast, you're less likely to be snacking on foods which are high in saturated fats, sugar, and salt. And sometimes you can have a slice of toast with maybe some scrambled eggs, some grilled vegetables, for example. And I've also recently loved hard-boiled eggs. I found them really good in sustaining energy levels throughout the whole morning. They are super easy to make, and different people have different ways of making it, of course. So that's my top tip for you.
Wonderful. Anything else from anyone else? No, it's almost like you answered the next questions, which was how do you avoid those slumps at lunch? And there we go, a hard-boiled egg, which is good, and all those lovely advice that we've had about a good balanced diet, which will be absolutely fantastic. So I know we've spoken a little bit about these spikes, haven't we? These blood sugar spikes through the day. So how do you find out about your blood sugar levels, and how do you see what spikes it? Now, I think there's one person and one person only who should take this, and Aisha. There we go.
I'm very excited apparently about blood sugar spikes. But no, absolutely. I think for a lot of people, it's quite accessible. I know it's quite easy these days to find like a blood sugar monitor, which you can pop on your arm. I know a lot of people with diabetes use it, but now more and more people are using it to harness their own nutrition and health through personalized nutrition. At Zoe, it's part of the testing, so we make sure that all of our users pop it on their arm for about 2 weeks, and essentially, but you don't have to, you can also, I'm pretty sure you can buy them off Amazon too. But it's very interesting. So when you're going about your day, you can see just what's spiking your blood glucose. You can see how exercise can affect it. You can see how even breathing, it's such a powerful tool, just really being in touch with your breathing. But essentially, you start to become very clever with meal combining, and you start to realize that actually my morning toast with I don't know, Nutella on top is not the best for me. And very quickly you start to find that as soon as you add that avocado, nuts, seeds, you're really flattening out that curve. You've got better energy levels throughout the day, less dietary inflammation, and essentially you start to feel better and look after yourself for your long-term metabolic health. So I really do recommend it.
Wonderful, thank you. Anybody else? Anything to add there? Wonderful. Okay, so we've all spoken a bit about hydration. We've got a question here about electrolyte powders. Helpful or expensive gimmick? I'm going to go with Nicholas.
Well, it does depend, quite frankly, what you're trying to achieve. Now, if you are an individual who is just going through normal life and you're not exercising, you're just doing a sedentary living, then what on earth are you doing? Why are you wasting your money on electrolyte powders? Essentially, if you require electrolytes, it's usually because you're sweating excessively. And so electrolytes may be useful for someone who is exercising intensely, people who are running a lot or training a lot. You need to replenish those electrolytes whilst you're exercising. So for my son, for example, when he's on the rugby field, it's essential. The coach is telling them to have their electrolytes to boost up again, to replenish all of that, the losses that could be having. We're also thinking about electrolytes full stop in terms of disease processes. Equally, if you're vomiting and having diarrhea, electrolytes will be lost as well. So electrolytes could be useful in that form, but people usually take it into forms of things like Diarylyte, for example. But any electrolyte would be useful if you're having dysentery.
Okay, thanks for anything to add, anybody from? Okay, so we've got a question. We've mentioned a lot about snacking, and we've mentioned a lot about it helping, but we've got a question about is not snacking unhealthy habit and not not needed if you have a proper breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and also does it hinder your fat store metabolism? I'm going to go with Georgine with this one.
Yeah, so I think snacking can have a negative connotation, as we discussed briefly earlier, about how generally snacks are unhealthy, considered unhealthy, particularly looking at the ultra processed foods, becoming quite a big industry nowadays. And we can talk about this as well in another chat, for example. But yes, indeed, it's very important that to be mindful of our feelings of fullness. If you do have sufficiently with your 3 main meals of the day, if you don't feel hungry at all, please do not just go for extra snack unless you really want it. And sometimes I think we forget our feelings of hunger and we ignore our feelings of fullness. So I think in a way we have to somewhat recalibrate our feelings of satiation and satiety a little bit better, because we're bombarded with so many different messages these days as well. I think someone mentioned that so much information about nutrition, and again, there's no silver bullet to nutrition and healthy eating. I think the key pillars to eating healthy really stands, and there's no a quick way of doing it. It's really just to make sure we build these healthy habits into our daily routine, drink up, eat well, and move more.
Right. Anything to add, anybody?
I would say something on that. It's just because, look, at the end of the day, we're dynamic human beings, right? If you eat a nutritious meal, let's say you have your porridge sweetened with fruits, strawberries and blueberries, for example, no sugar in it, and that sustains you. If you've been working really hard and you're focusing, and you're so busy, your brain is using up so much energy, it might run out by 11:30. It might need a little bit of water. It might need a little bit of nuts or a fruit or something like that. The point is that we are live human. If we're just sitting down doing nothing or not so stressed, then that food may sustain us. But if we're busy rushing around, walking around, doing this, doing that in the morning, likelihood you're going to need some extra energy. And so that's where a snack is important. So it's about listening to your body. It's not about having the sweets on the table and then eating them bit by bit throughout the morning and having that as your form of a snack. It's about doing it, as everyone has said, it's about making the right food choices, having those food choices available to you, and then listening to your body, mindfulness, being aware of what your body's telling you to do, and then responding to it in a healthy way.
Great, wonderful. So I'm going to go to to Mariella. We've got a question about sleep. So, isn't a break or a nap a better solution to snacking? It's sort of an add-on for the next one, to snacking for sustaining energy levels. So, is a nap good?
Yes, well, first of all, I think we have to understand that health and nutrition is not black and white. So I think it's about understanding what works for you. And particularly with naps, I think some people find that a 20, 30-minute boost, like nap boost, can actually raise the alertness, for example, for shift workers. So it's quite beneficial for them to take a nap. But I wouldn't say it solves the problem of snacking per se, if you don't understand where the background is or what's the reason behind the snacking. So yeah, I would say it all summarizes as understanding what works for you. So it's not like naps are bad. It's not like snacking is bad. It's just what is it that you need and what's the reason behind that. And I would say a 20-minute nap is not, it's not going to hurt anyone.
Anybody else? Anything to add about napping?
Yeah, again, it's about recognizing, you said about identifying what's the cause. If you've had poor night's sleep, chances are the nap is the thing for you, if you have the opportunity to have the nap. But in terms of napping, yes, there's evidence that shows a quick nap helps, but no longer than 30 minutes. If it's longer than 30 minutes, you're getting into deep sleep, and that causes grogginess when you wake up. So a 45-minute nap is deleterious to you. It can be no longer than 30 minutes. So if that's a problem, then do it. If it's poor hydration, replace the water. If it's poor food intake, then replace the foods. Identify what your issue is and then respond to it.
Okay, we have 3 more minutes, and I'm going to cover a topic that I'm sure everybody has an opinion on. Okay, ultra processed food. Ooh, right in the end. Okay, I'd like to get people's views on ultra processed food and maybe what people think. Is this hype, or is this actually a thing? I'm going to go with Aisha first.
Okay, really, really good discussion. In fact, I was reading the question in the comment section, and I thought he really touched upon some fantastic points there. From a nutritional perspective, when we look at it like that sense, we know that ultra processed food is not great for you. It's not great for your gut microbiome. We all know this. It's not good for, it doesn't contain the micronutrients that our body craves, essentially, right? But what is it? It's convenient. It's accessible. We live in a very built up world where it's very accessible to us. I would say that there's so many aspects to think about. I come from a global health perspective. Again, socioeconomic status is a huge thing. However, what I'd like to say on this discussion is, if you can steer away from it, if you have the facilities, the means to create your own fresh meals from ingredients daily, that's what we advise. However, if that's difficult for you, if you are from a lower income background, and it's very common. So what I would say as a nutritionist is, as much as you can, meal prep, try to plan, try to be strategic. I know that a lot of mothers, single mothers, they talk about having baked beans as a way to give fiber and protein to their children. It's easier, it's cheaper, but at least and it is a form of processed food. However, that you try to use the means that you have. So I would say, if you have the means, prep.
Wonderful.
Fresh food, perfect. That's what I would say.
Fantastic, Aisha. Okay, we have 30 seconds each about UPF. Nicholas, go. 30 seconds.
So ultra processed foods and coming various amounts, about knowing the difference. So you've got lightly processed to very processed. It's not about processing being bad. An example, a piece of bread is processed. If you put it in a toaster, it's more processed. If you burn it, it's even more processed. The burning is the carcinogens. Don't eat burnt toast. Lightly toasted is better for you. So just think about how processed is my food. Try and go with the least processed foods as much as you possibly can, and avoid the ultra processed foods.
Fantastic. Mariella.
Yeah, I would say try to go for a minimally processed diet, but understand that not all ultra processed food are equal. So I would encourage people to get into food labels and understand how they work. What should you look after, and just opt for things that have fewer ingredients. I don't want to exceed the 30 seconds.
30 seconds. And the final question, Georgine, UPF, final point.
So unfortunately, it's a systemic issue, how the availability of ultra-processed foods have taken over our shopping basket, so to speak. I think it's the idea that we should, instead of perhaps thinking about penalizing us eating too much processed food, and actually rethinking about how we can eat more healthily, including lots more fruit and vegetables, and sometimes certain fruits, for example, processed, or vegetables dried, for example, can make useful contributions to our diet as well. But making sure that we go along with what we have, taking into account our food budget, etc., but also reappreciating all the variety of foods available in our environment.
Wow, wonderful. What a great way to finish, everybody. We are on time. We are 1:29. Thank you so much, everybody, for an absolutely riveting conversation. We have lots and lots of questions there. We could have been here for another hour and a half, I have no doubt, unpicking your brains for all that information. But thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I will hand over to Lisa to close the meeting.
Thank you so much, Adrian, for being such a fantastic chair, and for keep managing to cover so much ground in that time. As like you said, we could have, it's such a fascinating subject. We could have been here easily for a couple more hours, but all good things must come to an end. So I'd love, just a thank you to you. Thank you to Aisha, Nicholas, Georgine, and Mariella as well for joining us. It's been so lovely to have you back at UCL. So I just wanted to add as well, you'll see on the screen. So if you could please take a moment to fill in the feedback form. It only takes a few minutes on average. And we really do rely on your feedback to shape these sessions in future, particularly as this is the last session that we have. And we'll take a break for the summer recess and return in the autumn. So while we're planning next year's events, it's really important to gather any thoughts that you have. So yeah, do take a moment there. Other than that, I just want to say another huge thank you to everyone for joining today. Thank you to our panel, and we really hope to see you at another UCL Connect event very soon. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.